Hello, everyone. Tonight we will be not rushing, not scrolling, not pretending everything's fine. Tonight, we're sitting in a room where the heat clicks on too loudly, where the walls are beige, where the windows don't open, and the blanket on my lap smells faintly of bleach and yesterday's soup. Above me, a fluorescent light hums like it's trying to fill the silence, but it can't. Because some silences don't come from outside. They come from people, from rooms where no one knocks, from hearts that stop being homes. I'm here, by this window, watching shadows move across a cracked tile floor, and I'm thinking about her, the little girl I raised, the one I called my own, even when the paperwork didn't. And how now, she calls this place temporary, a place with staff who forget your name, a room that forgets you're human. But before we go further, before I tell you how I ended up here, and why she'll never walk through that door again, take a moment, like this video, and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy these kinds of stories. And leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is right now, wherever you are. I read them all. Everyone. Even the quiet ones. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on a fan. Let it hum in the background like the old memories do. And come with me. Tonight, we're going back. She wasn't supposed to be mine. Not in the legal sense, not in the biological sense, not even in the prepared-for-it sense. But sometimes, life doesn't wait for preparation. It just knocks. Or in my case, it didn't knock at all. It was a Thursday night, mid-October, the kind of night when the leaves stick to the sidewalk and the cold fog makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. I remember the silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that makes you feel watched. Like the trees know something you don't. I had just turned off the porch light. It was almost midnight, and as I locked the front door, I heard a sound, software like a cat pawing at cardboard. I turned the porch light back on, and there she was. A baby, wrapped in a worn blanket, left in a laundry basket. No note, no name, just eyes. Big, wet, frightened eyes. For a moment, I froze, the way you freeze when your life splits in two, before and after. I didn't think, I didn't plan. I just picked her up, held her close, and whispered something I don't even remember now. I called the police, of course. They came, they took notes, they checked the nearby doors. No one saw anything, no one heard anything. They said I could hold on to her for the night, until child services arrived in the morning, just for the night. But she didn't cry when I fed her. She didn't squirm when I sang to her. She fell asleep with her tiny fingers gripping my sweater, like she already knew what she needed. And that night, something old in me cracked open. Something that hadn't felt alive in years. I stayed awake the whole night, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to miss anything, any breath, any flutter of her lashes, any hint of who she might become. By sunrise, I knew I wouldn't let her go. Not then. Not ever. People called me foolish. Some said I was desperate. Some said I was lonely. Even my sister, the one who always minded her own business, asked if I was going through a late-life crisis. But I wasn't. Not really. What I was going through was motherhood. Unexpected. Uninvited, and yet, somehow, undeniable. I didn't ask to be her mother, but she didn't ask to be left behind either. Her name came to me on the second morning. I looked into those wide, storm-colored eyes, and it slipped out like breath. Lena. Software simple. Like the name had always belonged to her. Like it was waiting to be used again. The paperwork was slow, tiring. There were inspections, evaluations, home visits, psychological screenings, as if love needed to be proven. But I did it all. Because every time someone held a clipboard between me and that little girl, I held her closer. We fell into rhythm. Morning oatmeal, afternoon walks to the library, evenings with lullabies, sometimes off-key, but always soft. She was quiet at first, cautious. She'd flinch at loud noises, or pull away when I hugged her too fast. But slowly she uncurled. She learned how to laugh, how to squeal at bubbles in the bath, how to sleep with her hand still wrapped around one of my fingers. She became my shadow, my echo, my reason, and I became hers. I remember the first time she called me Mama. She was 3. We were in the grocery store. She tugged my sleeve, pointed to a box of cereal, and said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Mama, that one. I didn't cry right there in the aisle, though I wanted to. I just smiled and said, that one it is. That night, as she slept under a blanket with ducks on it, I sat beside her and whispered, "You're mine. You're not born from me, but you're part of me now." No one told me how hard it would be, how lonely it gets when people don't understand the shape of your family. But Lena never asked. She never questioned. She just grew, and I loved her more fiercely because of it. Love, real love, it takes things from you, not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece, like waves smoothing a stone. And with Lena, I gave everything I had. I gave up sleep. I gave up weekends. I gave up promotions at work because they came with travel I couldn't afford to take. I traded my dream of owning a bakery for baking cupcakes at PTA fundraisers. I watched my friends drift away, one by one, their lives filling with things I no longer had time for. Brunch, vacations, relationships. I was 42 when I took her in. Single, comfortably employed, stable. By 48, I had cashed out most of my retirement fund to pay for her school uniform, her asthma treatments, her braces. And I did it all willingly, because when she smiled, really smiled, it lit up a part of me I thought was long dead. There was no resentment, no keeping score. I was her safety net, her cheerleader, her calendar reminder, her umbrella on the rainy days. And though I never said it out loud, I thought, maybe one day she'd remember all of it. Maybe when she was older, she'd see the sacrifices. Not with guilt, but with gratitude. Maybe she'd come over on Sundays with a cup of tea and say, "I remember, Mama. I remember what you gave up." But life doesn't always reward quiet devotion, especially not the kind that folds laundry at midnight and eats last so a child doesn't go hungry. Especially not the kind that doesn't ask for thank yous because it assumes they'll come later. Sometimes, they never come. Lena grew up, and I stayed where I was. The same house, the same small job, the same wrinkled hands cleaning the same countertops. I never remarried, never moved, never left, because I thought I was building something sacred, something that would shelter me when I got old. But now, I look around this place, this room with its peeling linoleum and plastic bed rails, and I wonder, was I building a home or just preparing someone else for their escape? Everyone thought she was mine. Teachers, doctors, strangers at the grocery store. They'd say, "She has your eyes," or "You two laugh the same." And I never corrected them, not once, because in every way that mattered, she was mine. I watched her take her first steps across the cracked kitchen tiles. I held her through her first fever, her first heartbreak, her first "I hate you" screamed from the top of the stairs. I was there when she forgot her lines in the school play, when she got her first A in science, when she stayed up all night crying over a college rejection, and I stayed up with her, pretending I wasn't crying too. I wasn't just her guardian, I was her anchor, her audience, her witness, and she was my purpose. She called me Mama, long before she understood the difference between adoption and biology. And when she did learn, when a classmate asked why her last name didn't match mine, she simply said, "My mom found me. That's why she's mine." God, I clung to that, to those words, to that bond, because raising a child who wasn't born of your body means living with a quiet fear that one day they might choose the biology you can't give them over the love you did. But Lena never did. Not back then. She was fiercely loyal, grateful even. She'd write me cards on Mother's Day, not the store-bought kind, but ones with uneven letters and smudged hearts. "You're the best mom in the world. I love you more than cookies. You're my hero." And every time, I'd tuck those cards away in a shoebox, like proof, like insurance, that all this love meant something, that when she grew up and the world got louder, she'd still hear my voice above it all, that she'd come back to me when I was old, when I couldn't give anymore, when it was my turn to be held. I really believed that. I let myself believe that love like mine was unforgettable. But memory, it's a slippery thing. And sometimes the people we carry the longest are the first ones to let go. It didn't happen all at once. You never expect the first distance to come in the form of a sigh, a look away, a delayed reply to a text. But that's how it begins. Lena was 16 when I first felt it. We were at the kitchen table. I was trying to help her with chemistry, and she rolled her eyes. Not playfully, not like a joke, but like I was in her way, like I was something to tolerate. I laughed it off, told myself teenagers are moody, told myself it was normal, hormones, stress. She was growing up, she needed space. But space, it grew like a crack in the ceiling. By senior year, she no longer asked for rides. She stopped coming home for dinner. Her door stayed closed, even on weekends. She still said, "I love you," before bed, but it felt like a button she was trained to press. A habit, not a feeling. And when she got into college, the one out of state, the one I could barely afford to help with, she said it so casually. "So I'm going to Michigan." Like it was a new brand of shampoo. I nodded, smiled, said all the right things. I even bought her luggage, a pale blue set with matching tags. But when she hugged me goodbye on move-in day, her arms were loose. Her eyes were already looking past me, toward something else. Someone else. She called less and less. Texts turned into emojis, updates into one-word answers. I started to wonder, had I made it too easy? Had my sacrifices taught her that love didn't need to be returned, just accepted? Or was this just what growing up looked like? Detachment dressed up as independence. I didn't know, still don't. But what I do know is, the first time I needed her, really needed her, she didn't come. I had a fall, slipped in the kitchen, bruised my ribs. I texted her from the hospital bed. She replied the next day. "Glad you're okay. Been crazy busy. Love you. Love you." 2 words, 12 letters. They used to fill a room. Now they couldn't even fill the space in my chest where the ache was growing. His name was Derek. I remember it clearly because it was the first name she said with a kind of softness she used to reserve for me. She brought him home one Thanksgiving. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of handshake that said, "I'm already in control." He complimented the turkey, offered to help with dishes, laughed in the right places, but behind his eyes, there was calculation. Like he was always measuring the room, measuring me. I didn't say anything, didn't want to be that mother, the one who meddled, the one who judged. But over time, he didn't even hide it. He'd correct her in front of me. Small things, but sharp. "That's not how you tell it, babe. You always forget that part. You're just bad with numbers." He'd smile after saying them, like it was funny. But Lena, she started smiling too. A nervous kind of smile, a practiced one. And when they moved in together, I knew. Knew it was the beginning of a shift I couldn't stop. Phone calls became filtered, like someone was listening, or editing. I'd ask, "Are you okay?" She'd say, "Derek just thinks I overreact sometimes." Or, "He's just protective." It's sweet, really. But it wasn't sweet. It was erasure. She started forgetting things. Birthdays, the stories we used to tell, the small rituals that tied us together. One day she called me Joy on the phone. Not Mama, not Mom, just Joy. I didn't even correct her. I just stared at the wall and whispered the word to myself like a stranger's name. Derek was in real estate, she said. Ambitious. Always working. Always looking to the next thing. And I could tell. The next thing didn't include me. I remember the last dinner we had together. She came alone. Her eyes tired, her smile tight. She said, "Derek thinks I give too much time to the past." I said, "Do I live in the past, Lena?" and she said nothing. She just looked at the clock and said she had to go. That was the night I started setting fewer places at the table, stopped checking my phone every hour. That was the night I felt the daughter I raised being rewritten in someone else's handwriting. It started with little things: missed calls, postponed visits, a sudden pause when I asked if I could come by. She always had a reason: busy with work, helping Derek with a project, feeling under the weather. Then, one day, she called me. But not to check in. Not to ask how I was doing. She asked if I could transfer the deed to the house. "It just makes things easier with Derek's business," she said. "Tax stuff. You wouldn't understand." I didn't sign it right away. I told her I'd think about it, that I needed time, that it was still my home. She didn't call for 2 weeks after that. When she finally did, her tone was clipped. Tired. Not like someone who missed me, like someone who was disappointed I hadn't just obeyed. "You don't need to live there forever," she said. "You could downsize. Maybe a nice little condo, less maintenance, better for your age." Your age. It felt like a pin through my chest, not because she was wrong, but because she said it like I was furniture, like I had outlived my function. Eventually, I caved, signed the paperwork, told myself it was just a help, just a technicality. And for a while, nothing changed. But then she started dropping hints. "How are the stairs treating you? Don't you get lonely out there? Wouldn't it be nice to be around people your own age?" Then came the brochures, slipped into the mail slot, neatly folded, pastel colors, photos of silver-haired folks smiling in gardens. "You'd love this one," she said. "They even have watercolor classes." As if a painting class could replace a home, a memory, a life. I told her I wasn't ready. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. A month later, I got home from the grocery store and found the locks changed. My house, my front door, gone. There was a note taped to the door, just a few words. "We'll explain everything. Call me." L. I sat on the curb, bags of groceries at my feet, milk already sweating through the plastic, my hands shaking. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't her mother anymore. I was an inconvenience that needed to be placed somewhere. Neatly, out of the way, and preferably quiet. "It's just temporary," she said. That's what she told me, as the car pulled up outside a beige building with peeling paint and a broken gate that wheezed when it opened. "Just until we figure things out," she added, like this wasn't already figured out. I stared at the building. There were no flowers outside, no music playing, just the low hum of a vending machine inside the glass doors, and the smell, a strange blend of antiseptic and canned peaches. "I picked this place myself," she said too quickly, too rehearsed. "Better than the others. Private room, window view." She looked tired, but not guilty. I remember asking, "Where's Derek?" She looked away. "He's parking the car." But I knew he wasn't coming in. This was her job. Her cleanup. She walked me to the room. It had a bed, a chipped dresser, and a plastic orchid in the corner. The window didn't open. The curtains were stiff. There was a call button on the wall, but no one explained what it did. She helped me unpack a single suitcase. No photos, no keepsakes, no shoebox full of Mother's Day cards, just clothes, toiletries, and a pair of slippers that weren't mine. She stood awkwardly in the doorway, like she was waiting for permission to leave. "I'll be back on Sunday," she said. It was Thursday. I nodded, because what else was there to do? She kissed my forehead, whispered, "Thank you for understanding," and left. No Derek, no explanation, just the sound of her heels clicking down a tiled hallway and the slow, painful quiet that followed. I sat on the bed, stared at the call button, wondered if I pressed it, would anyone really come? That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the hallway light bleed under the door, listened to the coughs, the moans, the soft footsteps of night staff changing shifts. I held on to the edge of the mattress like I was trying to stay tethered to something, to anything. And I whispered to the dark. She said it was temporary. Over and over, like a prayer. But the walls didn't answer. And neither did she. The days blurred. Sunrise and sunset meant nothing. Just shifts in the light through that tiny window that never opened. Meals came on plastic trays, lukewarm, always soft, always beige. I used to love food, used to season everything just right, used to bake cinnamon rolls so fragrant they made Lena giggle as a child, saying the kitchen smelled like Christmas. But here, food was a duty, a chore, something you got through. The staff smiled, but not with their eyes. They were stretched thin. I could see it in their rushed footsteps, in the way they forgot names, forgot pills, forgot to pull the curtain when changing someone's clothes. And then there were the whispers. Low. Quiet. Just loud enough to hear your name without context. She's the one with the daughter in real estate. The one who was dropped off last month. I think she used to be a teacher. None of it was true. Not all the way. But in here, facts weren't checked. They were passed around like loose change. The only thing I could be certain of was the schedule. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 5, lights out at 9, even if you weren't tired, even if your thoughts refused to sleep. I asked about Sunday, the one Lena promised. I asked 3 times. She's probably just busy, a nurse said. Did you want me to call her? Another offered, but never did. By the 3rd Sunday, I stopped asking, because hope, in a place like this, is a sharp thing, and it cuts deeper the more you hold it. I stared at the ceiling at night, wondering if she remembered my birthday, if she still used that luggage I bought her, if she thought of me when walking into her fancy new kitchen. The worst part? I didn't even know where she lived now. She had moved, changed numbers, and suddenly I was a guest in the life I helped build, a ghost in someone else's success story. The staff kept saying, "She's probably going to visit soon." But I knew, I could feel it in the way my room stayed exactly the same. No flowers, no new blanket, no signs of her. And one day, as I stared out the window at a crooked tree with no leaves, I whispered something I didn't mean to say out loud. "She's not coming back, is she?" No one answered, but even the silence seemed to nod. It was a Tuesday when I noticed the pills were different. Not missing, not forgotten, just wrong. The blue one that usually came with breakfast was suddenly white. The label looked faded. The nurse shrugged. Same prescription, just a new brand. But it didn't feel the same. It made me dizzy, heavy, like I was underwater all day. I tried to ask again, about the dosage, about the name. She smiled too wide, said she'd check, never came back. Later that week, my towel disappeared, then my comb, then my reading glasses. Every time I asked, someone said, "We'll look into it." Or, "That's strange." But nothing returned, nothing changed, except the way they looked at me, like I was a chore, a file in a cabinet, a soft voice on the list to be dealt with before lunch. And when I passed in the hallway, they'd lower their voices, turn their eyes away. "She doesn't have a POA on file." "She's not private pay, right?" "She's the one with the family that never shows." I wasn't supposed to hear those things, but walls are thin, ears are sharper when the heart is bruised. One night, a woman down the hall started screaming, not from pain, from fear. I heard her cry out again and again, "No, don't leave me here." The staff rushed in. Calm voices, soothing lies. Then silence. She didn't scream again. She didn't appear in the dining hall the next day. No one mentioned her name. She was just gone. And I started to wonder, if I vanished, who would notice? Not Lena, not Derek. They hadn't called in weeks, months, maybe. I had no calendar, no phone, only the pale light from that window to mark the passing of time. Once, I asked a nurse what day it was. She said Wednesday, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice, like she wasn't sure, like it didn't really matter. And maybe it didn't. In this place, you aren't living, you're waiting, for mail that doesn't come, for family who've moved on, for the end to be soft, quiet, unnoticed. And as I lay in that narrow bed, listening to the distant sounds of trays clattering and TVs buzzing, I wondered, how did I become so easy to forget? I wasn't trying to find her. That's the part that hurts the most. I wasn't searching, wasn't snooping. I was just curious. One of the younger nurses, bless her, brought in a tablet one afternoon. She said we could look up music together, old songs, things I used to love. But somewhere between typing in Ella Fitzgerald and Aretha Franklin, I saw a familiar name flash in the search bar. Lena Caldwell, real estate consultant, Miami. My hand froze. My breath caught. She hadn't lived in Miami when I last saw her, not even close. I tapped the name. The screen lit up with a smiling photo. Her face, perfect makeup, a white blazer with soft gold buttons, arms folded confidently. Luxury listings for exclusive clients. I clicked again. There she was, on a balcony overlooking the ocean, holding champagne, laughing. Another post, her standing in front of a brand new Mercedes. Caption, "Hard work pays off. Couldn't do it without my biggest supporter's biggest supporter." I read that line again. And again. She didn't mean me. She meant Derek. I knew it. Felt it. Another post showed a glossy kitchen with marble counters and pendant lights. "Our dream home is finally complete. Can't wait to host." Host who? She hadn't even visited me, hadn't written, hadn't called. I scrolled further, spa weekends, brunches, poolside parties with captions like, "Surround yourself with those who lift you up." And all I could think was, I lifted you, I carried you, not just in the physical sense, but through life, through heartbreaks, through the dark years. I gave her every tool, every chance, and here she was, thriving in a world that had no space for me. I wanted to be proud. Truly, I did. But the pride I once held had been eroded, replaced by something smaller, duller, more hollow. I closed the tablet, handed it back, and when the nurse asked, "Did you find what you were looking for?" I just nodded. Yes, I found her. And I realized she'd already found a life where I didn't exist. The card said she'd visit Tuesday. It was handwritten, the only personal thing I'd received in months. A pale blue envelope, no return address, just her name in cursive. Inside, a folded note. "See you Tuesday around 11. Can't wait to catch up. Love you always, L." I read it so many times the creases began to fade. Tuesday came. I woke early, earlier than usual. Had the nurse brush my hair, asked for my softest blouse, the one with the little birds on it. It didn't fit quite the same, but I wore it anyway. I sat in the chair by the window, back straight, hands folded in my lap. The orchid in the corner still looked fake, but I turned it slightly, just in case she noticed. I watched the parking lot. Every car that turned in made my breath catch. A silver SUV at 10:20, not her. A red sedan at 10:45. Not her. At 11:02, I whispered, "She's just running late." By 11:30, I asked a nurse to check the front desk. They said no visitors had signed in, no calls, no message. I stayed in that chair until lunch, refused my tray, didn't speak. By 2 o'clock, my body began to ache from the way I had been sitting. Stiff, hopeful. By 3 o'clock, the light through the window had shifted. And so had something in me. At 4 o'clock, I went to bed, fully dressed, shoes still on. Didn't bother to undress. The nurse came in and said, "Maybe she'll come tomorrow." I didn't answer, because I knew. I'd been left on a doorstep once, and now I'd been left again. This time in a quiet room with an empty chair and a memory that hurt worse than absence. The next day, the card was gone. I don't know where it went. Maybe the staff threw it out. Maybe I did. Or maybe it disappeared the way promises do when no one is looking. Since then, I've stopped watching the parking lot, stopped fixing my hair, stopped asking for the blouse with the birds, because some visits don't get rescheduled, and some people only return in dreams. Part 14. Her name was Clara, one of the newer nurses. Young, kind eyes. The kind of voice that made you feel like a person again, not a patient. She started bringing me tea without me asking, offered to sit and talk during her breaks, asked real questions, listened to the answers. One day, she wheeled me out into the courtyard. It wasn't much. A patch of grass, a cracked bench, one brave daffodil trying to bloom in the wrong season. But it felt like air. Like the outside world hadn't completely forgotten me. She sat beside me and asked if I had any family. I told her. Everything. About Lena. About the beach house lie. About the transfer papers. About the card that never led to a visit. She didn't interrupt, just nodded, gently. When I finished, she hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "I looked you up," she said softly. "I wasn't supposed to, but after everything you told me, I had to know." She showed me a photo. Lena, on a stage, accepting some kind of award. There was a man beside her, Derek, I assumed, and in the caption, she'd written, "To the one who made me who I am, thank you for believing in me." I stared at it, trying to read between the lines, trying to see if maybe, just maybe, those words were meant for me. Then Clara spoke again. "Do you know why she chose this place for you?" I shook my head. She looked down, swallowed. "It's one of the cheapest in the state, and because of the house transfer, you don't qualify for certain protections. Technically, you're not indigent. On paper, you're still helping her." I felt the wind go out of me. Not rage, not even heartbreak, just a kind of stillness, like the moment after a final note fades in a song, when the air is quiet because there's nothing more to play. "She's doing well," Clara added, almost like an apology. And I said, "I know." We sat there for a long time. No more words, just wind through branches, leaves that didn't care who'd been forgotten, and one daffodil blooming anyway. That day, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the tears had already happened. In the silence, in the waiting, in the slow daily unraveling of a love that used to feel unshakable. Clara held my hand, and for the first time in a while, someone touched me without pity. Just kindness. And it reminded me that even if one person forgets you, the world still has room for someone else to remember. The room is quieter now, quieter than it's ever been. The call button still works, I suppose, but I haven't pressed it in days. There's a different kind of silence here, the kind that hums like the slow turning of a final page. I used to think love was a shield, that if you gave enough, sacrificed enough, stayed steady enough, it would protect you. From loneliness, from being forgotten, from being replaced. But now I see it differently. Love isn't a shield, it's a gift. You give it with both hands, not knowing what will be returned. You give it knowing it might be lost, or misused, or discarded in the hands of someone who once called you Mama and meant it. I raised Lena with everything I had, not because I had to, but because I chose to. And for a long time, that choice gave me purpose, joy, something to wake up for. But in the end, she left. She moved on. Not with anger, not with cruelty, just with indifference. And that's the sharpest kind of goodbye, isn't it? The one that doesn't even feel like a door closing. It's just a breeze and then silence. Still, I wouldn't undo it. Not one late night. Not one lunch packed. Not even the last time I watched her walk away without looking back. Because love is never wasted. Even if it doesn't come back the way you hoped. Even if it leaves you in a room like this with beige walls and forgotten birthdays. It still mattered. I still mattered. And maybe, when she's older, when the parties are quieter, and the phone stops ringing for her too, she'll remember me. Not perfectly, but softly. Maybe she'll remember the smell of cinnamon rolls on rainy mornings, the songs I sang off-key, the way I clapped the loudest at every school play. And maybe that memory will stir something in her, even if it's too late to say anything, even if I'm not here to hear it. Tonight, if you're still listening, thank you for being here with me. for sitting through the hard parts, for remembering what someone else forgot. If this story touched you, share it. And if you've ever loved someone who no longer calls, who no longer knocks, know this: you were never invisible, and your love was never in vain. Good night. And I hope you come back for the next story. End of script. Good night.